throughout this war. I mean, how does this change the negotiations that may happen between Iran and the U.S.? I mean, it feels like a very different playing field than it was a couple of hours ago.
Yeah, well, Kelly, it goes down to air superiority. So it was actually a couple of weeks ago, I was in the region reporting it, that the United States and the Israelis said that they had essentially knocked out all of Iran's air defenses, meaning that they could not reach any of the fighter jets that were on these bombing missions. And we're talking about thousands of bombing missions with F-15 fighter jets alleged to have gone down, F-35 stealth fighter jets, F-22s that have been engaged in fighting and targeting these areas. And they said they've essentially been able to fly with impunity over these areas. Where this changes the playing field dramatically is the fact that, well, if this is what it appears to be, and that is that a U.S. fighter jet was shot down, not just crashed, but shot down over Iran, then it shows that they continue to maintain a reach. And I can tell you from my own experience from just reporting there, it was also claimed that the Iranians had lost 90% of their missile launch capabilities, and those are related. But the Iranians have continued to launch missiles, some of those longer-range missiles, both into Israel and U.S. targets, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, again, those targeting areas in that region, in the Gulf, even today. So there seems to be an overestimation of what the United States and Israel has been able to do to decimate Iran's air defenses, but we're going to have to find out more details about their capabilities at the moment.
All right, Charlie, appreciate that. I want to bring in CBS News national security analyst Aaron McClain. He's a U.S. Marine veteran and a former foreign policy advisor on Capitol Hill, so the perfect person to have with me in this situation. So I want to start with what this fighter jet would have been doing in the region.
Well, you've heard the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, talk recently about how the military is able to move to dynamic targeting over Iran. That is to say, we have aircraft in the airspace conducting missions over Iran, but then they get retasked. They hear there's a missile launcher over here. You go fly over here and bomb it. And what that suggests is we are operating in a situation where we think we have air superiority, and our aircraft can essentially loiter over Iran and go find and prosecute new targets. Obviously, the longer you loiter, the more risk you have. It's possible here that the United States military may have missed one of Iran's higher-end air defense systems, or perhaps the Iranians were concealing it and saving it for later in the campaign. It's also possible, essentially, that a lower-quality system just got a lucky shot as this aircraft went by.
Well, because this is in broad daylight, too. So the lucky shot narrative could be more possible.
Well, in the search and rescue mission, I mean, there's astonishing images, we've seen and some proliferating across social media of Air Force C-130s, Black Hawk helicopters, variants thereof, operating low and pretty slow in broad daylight over Iran, looking for this downed aircrew. It's the kind of thing you would only do in a situation where you were willing to assume extraordinary risk because your objective was so important, namely saving some lives here.
And perhaps felt very confident that you did have that air superiority. We know that a search and rescue mission, is underway. What would something like that look like? I mean, this is hostile territory, obviously, that we're dealing with.
So there's a whole community of the United States military and of our Special Operations Command that doesn't get as much press as like the Navy SEALs and the Delta Force and guys like that. There's an Air Force Special Operations Command and a pararescue unit within that is dedicated to these kinds of missions. Those guys have been in the region, essentially staged and waiting for something like this. This is not to be flippant about it, but this is game day for them. I mean, it's obviously a tragedy if one of these crew members is hurt or, God forbid, dead, but they are out there doing the mission for which they've been trained year after year, and in an extremely hazardous situation where it's daylight, they're visible. Obviously, one of the ironies of an operation like this is you assume a lot of risk to go and rescue other people who have already been shot down.
And just give us the historical context. When is the last time that we have seen something like this happen, where a U.S. fighter jet is down in hostile territory and we have to go in and rescue?
The truth is there's actually not been much over the recent decades, which speaks to sort of American military dominance and the kind of campaigns that we've waged. There was a jet that went down over Syria in the last decade. We lost a number of helicopters in Iraq and Afghanistan. But you really have to go back to the 90s to see a high rate of this kind of thing. The first Gulf War, for example, there were a number of aircraft shot down. Similar, fewer, but still a few shot down over the former Yugoslavia in the late 90s. We are not particularly typically used to operating in an environment where there's heavily contested airspace. Obviously, here in Iran, we're encountering that here about, 5 weeks into the campaign. It's a very serious consideration.
All right, Aaron McClain, appreciate your context and analysis. I want to bring in Elizabeth Palmer, who's in Tel Aviv this morning. Liz, can you sort of paint the picture of what we're hearing from Iranian state media?
Reading the tea leaves a little bit, because they haven't confirmed where this jet went down, but it does appear to be in Khuzestan province, which is right at the head of the Persian Gulf, very close to Karg Island, the great oil terminal that President Trump has threatened to take. Now, the governor has said that if somebody does find the pilot, who is assumed to be out there somewhere, there will be a reward of $50,000, which is a great deal of money in Iran. And if they do get the pilot, the Iranian playbook is sort of to put him on television. So if they do seize him, I expect that we'll see him fairly quickly on television as a sort of a very valuable, if you like, prize of war to parade in front of the U.S. and its allies. We're waiting to hear confirmation now from the Iranians. At the moment, there's just a lot of chatter and excitement, and this sort of general directive to people to go out and see if they can find what's assumed to be the missing pilot.
Yeah, the image that you have now put in my mind, Liz, of an American potentially on Iranian television, that certainly would change the narrative. Appreciate your time. It's a perfect segue to bring in Weijia Jiang at the White House, because, of course, Weijia, the narrative from the White House has been that Iranians' capabilities are decimated. We heard the president earlier this week in a primetime address. What are you hearing from the White House, if anything?
Kelly, at this hour, we are hearing nothing from the White House or President Trump, despite multiple requests, multiple texts, emails for comment. Nothing so far. But you're right that it was just 2 nights ago that the president addressed the nation and said that Iran had essentially been eviscerated and that it is no longer a threat. The president said, quote, "We've done all of it. Their Navy is gone. Their Air Force is gone. Their missiles are just about used up or beaten, taken together." So the president was really projecting that the U.S. was able to take out all of Iran's capabilities in terms of those things, but clearly that is not the case. So we are waiting to hear how this changes the calculation, Kelly, for how to proceed next and for whether this alters the president's plan for staying in Iran, for withdrawing, because clearly this is an escalation.
All right, Weijia, appreciate it. I just want to bring in Aaron McClain one last time. Weijia was just saying that this could change things. In your mind, where could we go next? Because this certainly has changed the trajectory of this war.
Well, the Iranians are hostage takers by nature. It goes back to the origin of their very regime in 1979 and 1980. Our pilots are trained, assuming, and we're all praying that they got onto the ground alive and able to move. They're trained to evade, and they are trained, if captured, to act in captivity in a way that does credit to their nation. So we're praying for them, and we will have to see how the strategic calculus shifts, if at all. This is militarily not... it's the kind of thing you would expect to happen. If you fly these sorts of missions over Iran long enough, eventually you're going to lose something. Politically, we'll have to see how the administration responds.
And just quickly, last question. This could certainly change negotiations if you do have an American hostage on Iranian television. Does that change the Strait of Hormuz in terms of how this all comes together?
Well, it certainly, if the pilot has been captured or the crew have been captured and are in Iranian custody, this is another element of leverage for Iran. They've got the strait closed. That's their main aspect of leverage. But if they have the crew too, that's another point in their column.
All right, Aaron McClain, appreciate your time today. All right, just to recap, 2 sources confirmed to CBS News that a U.S. F-15 fighter jet has been down in southern Iran. A search and rescue effort is underway. It is not known how many crew were on board. Coverage of this still developing story will continue on your local news and our streaming channel, CBS News 24/7. There will be complete coverage tonight on the CBS Evening News. Many of you will return now to CBS Mornings. This has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm Kelly O'Grady in New York.